Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA Podcast. I'm your host, André Natera. On today's episode, I have Chef Rogelio Garcia from the Michelin-starred Auro restaurant inside the Four Seasons in Napa Valley. He's been nominated by the James Beard Foundation. He's been on Top Chef. He's been the chef of several Michelin-star restaurants, and he just published his first book, Convivir. We get into all of that. This is a really great conversation, and he's an amazing chef. I enjoyed my time with him very much, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Chef, good seeing you, man.
Thank you.
But before we even get started, I need to congratulate you. I know you just wrote a book. I'm excited that you brought it. It's beautiful. And then, I know you just got nominated with James Beard. You got the Michelin star. You've been on Top Chef. Your career is going like this. Congratulations on all the success. I mean, how did this even get started, Chef?
Oh man. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's definitely a beautiful day here in Austin. And it's incredible to be here. And I've been a lot of support in this city. I remember the first time I came here was exactly 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah,
what?
I have a friend who owned two restaurants,
Okay.
and he invited me over, and he kind of showed me around. And it was the first time that I ever came to Austin. The second time that to Texas. The second time was last week, and now I'm back for the third time in less than 2 weeks.
So you're just down here promoting the book?
Promoted the book, just sightseeing, saying hi to friends, coming to see you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, because part of your story, with the book, you have a very interesting story, unique to what motivated you to write the book.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, can you give a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, so I was born in Mexico City.
Yep.
And then I grew up did a stint in Los Angeles. So my mother came when I was 2 years old with my sister. And then we spent about 10 to 12 years in LA. By the time I was 15, we moved to Northern California. I had aunts and uncles that lived in Napa Valley, and they would always tell my mother, hey, bring your family. It's a beautiful place. Get out of Los Angeles. This was the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Rodney King riots. I mean, all that stuff that was happening, like big hip hop influence, like Snoop Dogg was just getting started. I mean, all the, you know, right?
I know.
And so it was a big, they call it the golden years in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
A lot of great music. And so I remember
The movie Colors is
Colors. Yeah,
Right,
yeah. I mean, Boys in the Hood. I mean, you
Yeah.
name it. And so it was hard not to, be in that world and be influenced by that world.
Mhm.
Not that I ever got into trouble or anything like that, but I did always feel like I didn't fit in, and so my mother decided to move us to Northern California. It was a huge move.
Mhm.
She's been a nurse for ever since we got to the States, and she still is. We made it to Northern California, and
How old are you at this time?
15. So I halfway through high school.
Okay.
So you could imagine, from kindergarten all the way through 10th grade.
Yeah.
Friends, that I've seen
Restart.
and restart in Napa, right?
Yeah.
It beautiful, but at the time it was a hard adjustment. It was super difficult to adjust to a different part. I mean, I might as well be in a different country.
Mhm.
For the first couple months in high school, I was, a bit of a loner. I was trying to get friends, things like that. And I think that's what drove me into cooking. So I was like, you know what? I want to help my mother to, pay rent, bills, whatever. I want to get a job. So I pushed hard for that. And that's how it kind of all began. Dishwasher, massive resort. It was almost like two resorts in one, doing banquets of, 1,000 guests.
This is in Napa?
This is in the heart of Yountville. That was the one of the big. It's one of the biggest resorts in Napa Valley.
Silverado? I mean,
It was Villaggio Inn and Spa.
Bellagio, yeah. Beautiful also.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so when I started, man, I was getting crushed. Like you can imagine banquets of 400, 500, 1,000, and me and two other guys just washing dishes. So I would go to high school, rush to. I remember the bell rang at 3:30, and I had 30 minutes to get from Napa to Yountville.
Yeah.
Put my coat on, the
taking the
checker
bus.
pants. I know you
Yeah.
remember the checker pants.
Which, by the way, I should say, you always could spot a culinary student when they're on the bus
Yeah.
with the checker
Yeah,
pants, the hat. They still wear
Right.
the hat
They still, yeah.
on the bus.
I've always been kind of hesitant of going out like that in the
Yeah.
world. Like to I don't know. I've always kind of taken my taking them off. But I rushed to get 4:00, and then it was a go from there. I didn't get out till midnight, 1:00, and so it taught me discipline. It taught me teamwork. It gave me a little bit of a purpose. As I was trying to find myself in a new stage in my life, high school years, right? Difficult already. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do after high school. Finally got a job, making a little bit of money, helping my mother pay rent. I think what was the most astonishing thing was the actual hard work that it takes, and I loved it. I love that feeling of getting a paycheck at the end and that you work so hard to get.
You remember what you were making back then?
Oh man, it had to be like $7.58 an hour.
Yeah.
But it was I might as well be a millionaire, man. Like my first paycheck, it was like, I mean, I don't know,
$200.
$200. I was like, wow, this is, so I can afford the expensive lunchbox, in high school and the good, like I didn't have to line up and get the lunch that they get, everybody gets. You can actually go to, because they would bring vendors in my high school.
Yeah.
So you would have like Pizza Hut there, you would have, local restaurants, and they would come and sell. So if the only kids that had money, or the ones that are lining up. So I was, I'm moving up. I can afford a Subway sandwich, and not line up for the food in the cafeteria. But it was good. And so I think watching the artistry of the kitchen, the camaraderie, is what really brought me to take it on full blast. And so I actually took acting classes in high school. And I wanted to do that after high school. I remember talking to my younger brother and saying, hey, I must have been like in a junior. And I was like, I kind of want to do this. Like, I kind of want to get an agent. I want to do this, and I want to kind of apply for, whatever the shows, like whatever it is, and see if I can do that. I don't think I was that great because the classes I was taking, there was guys that were incredibly talented. I mean, singing, dancing, just the whole theatrical and the talent that these guys had. I was definitely not that, but I was like getting inspired and be like, maybe I can do that. Maybe this is something. But I think when I got into like maybe my first full year in a restaurant is when I was like, this is what I want to do. I've always loved food. My mother's an amazing cook. My grandmother, I didn't spend a lot of time with her, but I did spend a full summer and tasting her food. I can see how my mother was able to take those recipes and that influence and become an amazing cook. And I loved eating all the time as a kid, and it just made sense,
So did you go to culinary school?
I didn't.
No,
I didn't.
So you just started working your way up.
I did. I tried to go. I I couldn't. It was too much money, man. It was expensive.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because a lot of the questions that I get is like, should you go to culinary school? Do you have? And I tell people, it's like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can still be some of the most successful chefs didn't go to culinary school.
Right.
Some other ones that are successful did.
Right.
So it's more about what you got in here, in
right.
your heart, and your drive.
Yeah.
I think that makes the difference, and clearly. So for people listening, there's your answer.
Yeah. Well, I think if I would have had the money, and obviously I wanted to do it, I think I would have gone. I think there's definitely a lot of advantages to going, connections, friends. You're an alumni at the end of the day. There's a lot of other stuff that I didn't, I wanted to do it because I wanted to. I don't come from a generation of restaurateurs, or so I could have learned things quicker and faster. And I think when you put both worlds in the same place, like you have the grit and the passion and the dedication and the hard work, and you go to culinary school, it's a match made in heaven.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Around what year is this?
So we came in 2002. Yeah. So I graduated 2004.
So you're working in serious kitchens in 2004?
I want to say right after high school. Yeah. I mean, I think every kitchen in Napa Valley, just because of the amount of competition, at minimum, they're all serious kitchens.
Right.
I would say, no matter what level. I mean, it's
everybody's
like pushing for those gas and wanting to.
Yeah, being good is normal.
It's normal. Yeah,
normal.
Right.
And I agree with you. I spent some time. I actually talking about culinary school. I went to. I've overdone it. Like I've gone to culinary school, online culinary school, and taken courses at every CIA in New
that's
York,
incredible.
Calistoga, not Calistoga, St. Helena, San Antonio. Like
Wow.
I've done all the CIAs.
Yeah.
I've done, all, and I'm big into education because
Yeah.
I geek out on it. But I probably overeducated myself.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but what I was going to ask you is when you were coming up in kitchen. So you're the guy in the kitchen.
Right.
You don't have culinary school, but I'm assuming everyone else in those kitchens probably did.
They did.
How was that for you back then?
It was intimidating. Even the basic things I didn't even know. I didn't know what a 6-pan was. I didn't know what a quart, like a 9th pan was, a hotel pan. I remember that my mother used to make these, fillets. Like she would get fish and she would call them fillets, like a fillet of fish.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? So we would eat that as kids. And remember the chef asked me, hey, can you go get the fillets from the walk-in? And so I walk in the walk-in and I'm looking for fish.
Right.
Like I'm looking for fish in the speed rack. I'm like, I go back and he's like, no, fillets, like filet mignon. It's a meat. Things like that, right? Like lemons and limes. Like in my house,
I know what you mean.
limon is it's
the yellow one.
It's the yellow one. He's looking for a green one. So
Yeah.
The bait, like when I tell you no training, it was like no training. Like really nothing. We don't. My mother is a nurse, like I said, and we didn't have that kitchen language and that lingo to kind of move myself throughout. But it was it took me a while to get used to it. I would write things down. I would kind of like you, go to YouTube and watch videos and try to educate myself by cookbooks, ask questions, find out who was the somebody that I would feel comfortable in those kitchens and kind of get advice. Maybe they were a little bit more advanced, more experienced, and kind of get answers through there. But I think there's not one source. It's just think all that together is what I think inspired me and brought me forward step by step.
Do you think? And I'll share this with you. When I was like around the same time, 2004, I'm also kind of in the Napa Valley area, and I remember going to the farmers market. And I was coming from Texas and then going to Napa. And for people that maybe you didn't know, but back then I also think there was a bigger quality difference. I think it's closed in a little bit, but back then it was a big quality difference between the produce in Texas versus the produce of the farmer's market in Napa or wherever.
Yeah.
And I just remember wandering around like, man, the food here is so good. And it really changed my perspective on, letting ingredients shine and all that. So what I'm going to ask you next is, did you ever feel like you had an advantage because of the resources and the abundant produce and the access to higher quality ingredients and all the artisan farmers when you started branching out onto your own?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you start with something that's excellent and great, it's a huge advantage. And I don't know if I would have been as inspired maybe if I would have grown up somewhere else that didn't have those ingredients, possibly.
Yeah.
But I think that's why as I continue to mature as a chef, and I really want to highlight the farmers and give them their credit that they deserve. I just went to a farmer's market yesterday in Calistoga, and they're there.
I used to live in.
Oh, you did?
There was like a Days Inn or something like that.
Yeah. It's right there.
I used to stay when I would go to CIA.
Yeah, and there's this Hispanic woman that is selling her produce, right? So I go up to her and we're speaking in Spanish, and the first conversation, the first question I ask her is like, where are you coming from? And she tells me she's coming from maybe 50 miles away. And then I say, well, how do you tell me the process, right? I love asking these guys, like, how's the day look? Yeah. Wakes up at 3 a.m, packs all the stuff, needs to be out by, 5:30, has to drive 3 hours to be in Calistoga by 8, because that's when it opens. And is there till 1, so that farmer closes at 1, and she's got to go back and do it all over again.
That's something interesting, because I don't think a lot of chefs realize that the farmers are taking it just as serious as the chefs are.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
If not, sometimes more serious.
Yeah,
right.
I know, and I think that I wish I can support everybody. Yeah. The amount of purveyors that we get for heirloom tomatoes and figs and truffles and cheese, and you get 6, 7. There's just so much, and all these guys are trying to get in with every chef in there, and you just can't buy from everybody, you know.
Right.
And I wish I could, and I wish I could support it, because I know that based on, you know, my experience in growing up there, and, you know, some of these farmers have become best friends, and we had dinner together, and, you know, I know their family, they know, you know, my family, and it's just, I wish I can help them more, but, you know, everybody's limited, and, but I think it's an art for sure, and I don't think they get enough credit.
Yeah,
You know?
no, they don't.
I think all the chefs, we get all the hype and glory, but we couldn't be who we are if we didn't have these guys that are as dedicated as we are.
No, I think you bring up a good point. I want to ask you about the book, though.
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful, and I've been seeing it everywhere. You're on this. I don't want to say you're on a book tour, but I've seen your book everywhere.
Yeah.
How did this come to be? And then I also want to kind of dive deep into what does the process look like for people listening to write your own cookbook.
So it came to be when I was doing a dinner, a DACA dinner, in 2017.
What is DACA for people that don't know?
Deferred action. So basically, Barack Obama passed a law where if you came without your consent to the United States, for example, your parents, you're able to get a workers permit, social security number, all that kind of stuff. It's a visa, pretty much, similar to a visa. And so you don't get full citizenship, but you're able to coexist if you know. And so that definitely helped me out a ton, because if I would have had that in high school, then I think I would have been able to go to culinary school and do all the stuff. But got it in my early 20s, and, you know, there's a ton of requirements to get. And so I was doing a dinner in 2017 with my co-writer, Andrea, Lost in Gray, and we were trying to raise money because they were closing the applications. So we did a dinner, and we were able to kind of raise, you know, $10,000, and we kind of gave those to, you know, applicants that wanted to, you know, they couldn't afford the application and the fees and stuff like that. So that's how I connected with her. And then we were, you know, life happened, and then we reconnected during the pandemic, and we kind of decided to write a cookbook. I was already full blast on Mexican cuisine and what I was kind of learning and doing a lot of research. Because I was raised in Northern California, I think a lot of my start has been more towards Europe, you know, French and Spanish and Italy and things like that. And so I feel like I kind of neglected Mexico and my roots. And with her, we revisited it, and we came up with this plan of writing a book. And so that's how, you know, with the pandemic happening, and you know, I think it became the spirit of all the challenges that has been happening in the industry. And I wanted to highlight, first of all, Napa Valley, the ingredients, a couple wineries and vintners. Even if I don't highlight everybody, you know, a lot of the wineries have supported my career throughout. And so, and also the people that are, you know, in wineries and in restaurants, you know, that are doing that work. And so the book was born. You know, the recipes are rustic, you know, they're casual, they're meant to be picked up on Sunday night and cooked out of there. The stories are.
This book is for everybody. So it's not.
Sure.
It's not just. Sometimes chefs write books just for chefs.
Yeah,
and sometimes they write for home cooks. And sometimes it's kind of for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's. I think the stories are compelling. You know, I mean, things that I went through and things that I kind of experienced, and giving thanks and just being grateful. I think that's the biggest thing.
What is your process for writing look like? So, walk me through, like, how many times do you got to iterate the dish? How do you document the recipes? How do you photograph it? Like, what does that look like for someone that says, I want to write a cookbook?
Well, first of all, it's pitching what you want to write it about. You know, like, what is it going to be and how is it going to be kind of broken down? So having that idea really ironed out, and then having somebody, you know, we're chefs, right? So I you know, the things that I was learning, like an index and, you know, the font and the paper, all of the is it gonna be hardcover, softcover, like
pagination,
all that stuff, all the stuff that you would never even think about.
Right.
You started like to think about, and then once you have some sort of that concrete idea, right, and it just needs to be an idea, but it has to be very ironed out, and then you hopefully I already have a writer, right? Because they can help you navigate through all that stuff. And then what I did is we looked for an agent, so somebody that represented us. So they got to believe in our project and what we're doing, and we found one, but it took us a year, because you haven't wrote a book in the past, because you haven't have credentials, all that stuff. It kind of it puts you all the way in the back. So you got to start somewhere, right? So that's what I always tell myself every morning. We got to start somewhere. There's going to be somebody. It's going to be something. Finally, we get somebody. We sign with somebody after a year, and she takes what we wrote, right? It's not chicken scratch, but it's not like super tight. And she takes it and puts it in this format. And that's the first time that I remember that I was thinking, wow, this might be real. Like might be happening, right? We're not all the way at the finish line, but this project might be coming to life. And so, because her stamp was there, like everything was reorganized. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Then we go at it. We start to insert more recipes, more stories, more. And now our next goal was to get a publisher, right? So we worked another year. So my contract with her was for a full year. And if we don't get published, then either we re-sign if everybody agrees, or we just drop the project. So literally to the last week, we were like, I don't know if it's going to happen. Like, you get denied. And so there's we get an offer, and I was like losing my mind. I was like, no way, like seriously. And so I was already thinking like, this is not going to work. We put so much hours and work and late nights and talking to, my writer, like 2, 3 in the morning, about ideas and recipes and stuff like that. And once we sign with the publisher, then it becomes real. Then they take it and insert their format, and then it becomes real. Then it becomes more exciting, and then we start to insert more recipes, things like that. So then it's the next 2 years going to work on photography and recipe development and recipe testing.
This is almost a 3-year project.
It's 4 years.
4 years.
4 years from the idea to now that it's officially released last week.
So I want to ask you about the recipe R&D. So I'm assuming you're booking photo shoots. They're coming in. They're taking photos, and then you're like, okay, yes, no.
Right.
Which ones are going to go in the book?
Right.
And then for recipe development, is it just you working on every recipe, weighing everything out to the gram and making sure it's exact, or do you have a team?
Well, we had a team. We had a team for the initial recipe ideas. It was me, and then I would, consult with my writer. So we would be on the same page. And I think when you have somebody that's, so thinks just like you and wants the same goals, it's much cleaner and easier and so super inspiring. But the initial like recipe testing, there is a recipe tester, so I would do it once.
Does this person work for you?
This is somebody that you send it to. And then they and then you have to convert it, right? So for me, all my recipes are in grams, right? And then I have to convert them into teaspoons and cups. So that's and then there's a lot of back and forth, and maybe, there's a misunderstanding, or there's, so then there's a bunch of emails for one recipe. And so, you could imagine the amount of time and that it takes. But
and then and then they send you, I'm assuming, like the final document, an ebook or something that you look through.
Right. That was they send me it was all words. Before the photography, right? There was like mock pictures you just take off the internet just to. Yeah. So that was nice. That was very inspiring too. But when you actually are doing the photography, and you have the words, and then you have the photography, and then it's spined together, and they send it on like a PDF, and they finally send you that.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I think they were blown away too, because originally the book was supposed to be smaller.
Yeah. By the way, the cover's beautiful. I love this photo with the cracked plate.
Thank you.
And it's gorgeous.
Thank you. And it's got a little bit of the the Mexican flag,
like so I don't know if people could see that.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Here we go. Look at that. That's beautiful. Look at that. As the Fancy Chef 2000, that's beautiful and nice. Beautiful and nice. Look at the chef.
I want to highlight NBC. So NBC is a local ceramicist in Napa Valley. She does Nikki and Will did a lot of the ceramicists for the French Laundry and Four Seasons and just a lot of Michelin star restaurants. But very down to earth, very talented, and I use mostly all their ceramicists for the book. So when you
You use that also in the restaurant?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all of it, but I love her take on in her projects. And the beautiful thing is when you have somebody so close and also super talented, you can make whatever you want. I
Yeah.
mean, shape, size, you name it.
Yeah.
You know.
How much of the book, the items in the book, are on the menu now?
Well, this book is a little bit more casual than Auro.
Mhm.
Auro is a tasting menu, and it is hints of Mexico, wine country, tiny bit of Japanese, but it's a little bit of a difference. This is more of a casual concept.
Mhm.
There are things you can take as inspiration, but it's definitely two different concepts. So there are things there, but not like to the full extent.
So got it.
Yeah. Because when I was originally writing this book, the restaurant wasn't open, so that was a project, and then we opened the restaurant.
So I want to ask you about this because you've done the hotel circuit right now, the restaurants inside the Four Seasons that
Right.
you oversee. I know you've worked at the Hotel Intercontinental as a culinary director. How do you, and you've also worked in the independent restaurants, some
Right.
great restaurants, right?
Right.
How do you navigate the world of independent restaurants where, chef is the law, right?
Yeah.
The chef is the law, going into I don't want to say it's a corporate setting, but it is a corporate setting, but chef still is the law, but there's also other opinions,
Right.
right? You have a sales department,
Right.
general manager, and all
Right.
this other stuff. How would you push for a Michelin star in an independent restaurant versus pushing for a Michelin star in a restaurant that's attached to a hotel? And what's the difference?
Well, I think it's really, you need to have a team when
Yeah.
it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Whether you're in a standalone or a big corporation, if you don't have a solid team that you support and they support you, it's going to be very difficult. And I think for me, having that team that it's supportive,
Mhm.
and that I'm supportive too as well, whether it be anybody underneath me or above me or side by side, whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Napa in California, it's a mecca. It's a mecca of food. People go all,
Legends.
I mean, legends, man. Like
Yeah.
I feel intimidating, but also blessed. And
I saw you I saw on at the French Laundry 30th party. I saw you there.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, I'm just grateful, man. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, I'm grateful that this is you never really know, where you're gonna land, and it's only a dream, right?
Mhm.
Biggie Smalls, it's only a dream,
Yeah.
but I don't. You never really know. I think as a young cook, it was always to get a Michelin star, right?
Mhm.
It was always to maybe be on a cooking show, maybe write a cookbook, maybe maybe have
All those
something like
maybes are
that.
real now, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
never thought they would be real.
Yeah.
The amount of dedication and work and sacrifice.
Mhm.
I say that lightly. It's a lot.
Mhm. From a leadership perspective, where you're at now versus, the independent restaurants, do you, I don't want to say do you manage differently, but they are different. An independent
Yeah.
restaurant is different than,
Right.
than
Right.
a hotel. How do you, what's the same for people listening? Because a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to work in a hotel. I don't know if I want to work in an independent restaurant. So if you're giving advice to someone listening that's a new cook trying to make that decision, what are some of the key differences that you would highlight?
Well, I think you should do both.
Yep.
I think the versatile you are in everything in the industry is going to benefit you. I think you don't want to be just one. Just one, you want to do everything. You want to be able to do banquets of 200, 400 as
Mhm.
equally as a beautiful tasting menu that highlights whatever region you're at. But being a leader, I'm still a student too. I don't by any means feel that I've mastered that. I still continue to strive to be better, and I think you know that it's a pressure, right?
Mhm.
On all angles, from the guests to the expectations to the cooks to the higher ups, all that stuff. So, but I think in a standalone restaurant, there are things that, you need to be able to have a strong team as well, and when you're in a hotel, there's a lot more leeway because there's more outlets and things like that, right? So, uh, banquets, I think everybody knows that when you have banquets, it helps.
Yeah.
It helps a lot. And if
Yeah.
you don't have a banquet room or a facility and you have you're waiting on reservations, things like that, and you can't sit a 20 top or 40 top, whatever it may be, it's a lot difficult, to do that. So in a hotel that has a brand that's international, it's a huge help for everybody,
Yeah, it's interesting because I've done both, just like you, independent restaurants, hotels, and sometimes I talk to people and they're like, "I would never go to a hotel." I'm like, "Well, I wouldn't dismiss it just yet
Right.
because, well, for one, I feel like it's bad when we say I would never do this because sometimes people who may actually need to do that are
Right.
afraid to do it because of how they're going to be perceived by their peers.
Right.
It's like, well, if you have a family and you need medical insurance,
Right.
and you have bills and you've worked in 2 or 3 restaurants that you walked in and there's a lock on the door and they never gave you your last check.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, sometimes the hotel, there's a trade-off, but there's a lot of positives
Right.
to it as well. And I
Right.
think, we all, at the end of the day, like, yes, there's the cooking part. But at the end of the day, most people just want to, like, let's make sure our basics are covered. We're paying our bills. Our
Right.
families are taken care of. And sometimes the hotel offers that security. The independent restaurant doesn't. But sometimes I also feel like you lose a little bit of the chef carte blanche.
Right.
But in a restaurant, I will say this, in my opinion, a restaurant, you learn to react faster.
Right.
Because in a hotel, sometimes it's like, we don't need to make a move because rooms are still full.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, for
banquets
sure.
are still busy.
For
We don't
sure.
need to, like,
Right.
it might be a problem, but it's not a problem until the next 6 months.
Right.
Right. We're in a restaurant. If you don't fix it today, you might not be open
Exactly.
next month.
Exactly.
So it's a different mindset. I like you said, I would encourage people to work in both. So I don't know if you know, the Michelin Guide's coming to Texas, right?
I'm excited, man.
Me
I'm so
too.
excited.
Me too. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm kind of bummed that I'm not even, I'm not in the game anymore, but I kind of want to get back in just for that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. It's interesting that Michelin went to Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could share your opinion on this, but where do you think it's going? Because we had the taco shop in
Right,
Mexico
right,
get it.
Right.
Obviously they did what they did in Singapore. And then you have like a lot of people like, no, it should be strictly fine dining.
Yeah,
Other
yeah.
people now we're expanding into
Yeah.
different types of cuisine and we're
Yeah.
celebrating that. What's your take on?
Well, I think as far as Texas, I'm gonna make a prediction here.
Please make a prediction. There's been a lot of those.
First barbecue spot to get a Michelin star. What do you think? What do you think?
I'll tell you what, I agree with you. And I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna cut this part out. I'll have our opinions that they don't say on the podcast,
Right.
But I do think my prediction is I agree with you. I think there'll be a barbecue Michelin.
I think you have to, man. Like I feel like it's. I mean, I'm not from Texas. I'm not from here, but I think from afar, right? I think barbecue. It's from Texas, right? Like I feel it's like that taco guy getting a Michelin star in Mexico, right?
It's the
It's
culture.
a beautiful art as well.
Yeah,
right.
I
It's
agree.
as complex and as delicate and as anything else. And so having that would really define that art and almost put in this pillar of what barbecue is.
Yeah.
I was in Houston last week and I had an incredible barbecue here. But I think it's great. I think it brings a lot of for chefs, a lot of awareness and support and exposure worldwide.
How did it change you and the restaurant in particular at the Fort? Does the hotel also have a Michelin key too?
Right, one
key.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Thank you.
to you and the team there.
Thank you.
Where I used to work, they just got one as well. So
I know, I saw that.
Congratulations to those guys too. But
yeah.
with regards to business levels, how did it impact when you got the star at the restaurant? Did you guys get significantly busier?
We did.
Yeah?
Yeah, we did. We got significantly busier. And I mean, everything just goes up. I think for me though, validation.
Yeah.
Just for myself, I think Again, it's a dream that I've had. Everybody has different dreams. Some people want it, some people never wanted it. For me, it has always been a long dream, and to be able to have it, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And for the team too, the morale. I mean, working extremely hard, late nights, sacrifice, all that stuff, and for it to come like that, I'm just very humbled and grateful that it did, because there's been many times that I wasn't on the list. I mean, there's many times that I felt like I failed, and the years, right, building up to that. How do you pick yourself back up from like, I got to do it again one more year, and I gotta um, do better. Like really looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I got to do better.
Right.
This is not for any. This is something between me and myself. Like, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and saying, you need to be better. So what can I do? Do I more books, more research, more conversations, more stages, more eating out, more, all that stuff that it's when you put it all together,
Right.
and it's still not good enough. And then do it again, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And it's every year, right? So you're getting older, and so that was the process, right? So I think when I got it, it was the 2 years, or well, it was 8 months when we got it. It's when we opened to when we got it, but it was a buildup of like 20 years, man. It's like of pushing for that.
Let me ask you a question, because you incorporate your own personality,
Right?
and you said this a little bit earlier, where you talked about how doing Mexican food, but when you were coming up, I mean, I hate to say this, but in the United States, I feel like besides what Rick Bayless was doing, there wasn't a lot of chefs that were able to cook Mexican food and be considered like, okay, they got they're legit, they're soigné. And I feel like, I mean, I look at myself being, same, and it's like, I never cooked Mexican food outside of home.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes like, oh, Mexican food became accepted for me a little too late.
Right.
Yeah. So how did you, I was Mexican when it wasn't cool. But how do you reconcile that now with your food? Because some of the restaurants that you've worked in, and correct me if I'm wrong, haven't been Mexican. Right. So so you're pulling from your own heritage, and now expressing that. So how do you reconcile that in Napa Valley?
Right.
Like that is, such a legacy there with food.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't just do it right off the bat.
Yeah.
Specifically in Napa, I definitely had to do a lot of research. I definitely had to, work with these restaurants to understand. And like I said, how I started, not even knowing what a six-pan was and what the difference between a lime and a lemon was, to being here today, has been a lot of dedication and just learning, just trying to be a sponge and learn. And when I was going to open the restaurant Auro and come back to Napa, because I was in San Francisco for 7-8 years, and coming back, I didn't want to do what the other restaurants did, right? I really wanted to highlight who I was. And, some people may say, you don't really cook Mexican food, or it's too fine dining, whatever it may be. But I think when you have worked and researched and you have the confidence to do it, it's and yourself, it takes it's a journey to get to that point, and I still feel a little, sometimes like, wow, should I do this? Should I not do this? Like, I remember just researching the book, we were talking to historians, and a lot of people were not happy the approach we were going to take, or, it wasn't traditional and things like that. So we just had to do it. I grew up in Northern California, so if I was growing up in Mexico City or Oaxaca or more traditional take, then that would have been the take. But I grew up in Northern California. I for some reason just represent Northern California and those ingredients and all that stuff as I would say, American Mexican chef or Mexican American chef. So that's how the book was born. That's how the ideas were born. That's how the restaurant was born. And I think just pushing, for a voice.
Well, it's I talked to David Galati, David Susio, right?
Yeah,
Susio
yeah.
Talk, shout out to him.
Oh boy.
And I heard your interview with him.
Yeah.
I don't correct me if I'm wrong. What do you call you? Like the brown cow
Yeah.
or something? I forgot what he called you. And it was good though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel, especially in Napa,
Yeah.
do you feel a little bit of pressure, like from the community of like the hype and I don't want to say hype. Maybe that's not the right word. I'm gonna think about how I want to ask this, but you have a lot of the Hispanic community behind you, rooting for you. They're like, we're all proud. That's one of us, right? You made it. You did all. It's the American dream, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel a little bit of pressure to live up to that?
I think the pressure that I live up to is, to be honest, is the pressure that my mother had to do to get us here.
Yeah.
I think that's I don't think I'd done enough to even come close to what she did. Leaving her country, leaving her mother, her friends, her brothers, her sisters, and starting over in a country where you don't know the name, you don't know the currency, you don't know anybody. The time there's no GPS or anything that you can, nothing like that, right? So that to me is something that it's when you think about that, for me, it's I have to do right by that. And so because that journey it's a journey that is still happening today, right? But for her, she's super proud, and I thank her in the book. We're doing a couple book signings and dinners out of the book, and she's gonna be present. But I think that's the pressure that I feel, right? Like that pressure of trying to even come close to doing anything like that.
So I want to switch subjects, but one of the questions I get often on the Chef's PSA from a lot of chefs in the DMs or in my weekly Q&A, they always ask me, like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? What's your advice for mental health? And what do you do as a chef to make sure that you remain physically fit and stay? What's your wellness routine look like?
I run. I love running. I love staying active. Go to the gym. I live in the hills of kind of St. Helena. Like it's so I do a lot of the hikes up there, and I try to eat well. Like I try to read vegetables a lot and stay out of, I don't eat a lot of meat. Fish I love. But staying active and staying connected, I think is the biggest thing. Just anything that keeping family close, but also friends and having all those people around you that really care about you and want you to do well. And then being a support for them as well in any way, shape, where you can do that.
So I know you used to train MMA.
Yeah,
Taekwondo.
And
all that, and you're into UFC. Do you think any of that martial arts training is similar to what you do in the kitchen, or is there any crossover? Is there anything that you took from that you applied to the kitchen?
Discipline, and take care of yourself. Like those things are crucial, right? Because it'll show. Like it'll show. Like when we were training and when I was doing, Taekwondo and the MMA. I mean, there was guys in there that were incredible, man. Like they would compete professionally, and I think I stopped because I didn't want to get hurt.
Were you a chef at this time?
I was, I was probably like a sous chef or a cook. And I think as I got higher in the rankings, it was super hard, right? It's like it's one or the other, so it consumes you. But
you have a sparring day, you come in with a black eye, the line.
But it's a discipline and the workouts that teaches you all those things in that field, because it'll show when it's go time. If I didn't do the morning runs at 5 a.m, if I didn't do the workouts when we were gonna spar, it'll show. Like I would be super tired. Then you're not eating well, and it'd be difficult to perform. And it's the thing in the kitchen. Like if you don't take care of yourself, the hours are long, right? It is a sport in many, many ways. You have to be focused, dedicated, and alert at all times, because it's you, and then it's your staff, right? Everybody, the guests, right? All these people depend on you. So the more you're, you are taking care of yourself, the better everybody's gonna be. So
It's funny because I think a lot of people don't realize that until you work with a lot of cooks and you see them abusing their body when they're young. And it's like, man, I took good care of myself when I was young.
Yeah.
I used to do MMA as well. And like now I'm not in the best shape, but it's like, man, it all caught up to me from the kitchen.
Yeah.
And from MMA, like my back's not that great. I have to walk down the stairs backwards because my knees are not great.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that I think, man, I even though I did take care of myself, I realized I didn't even take, not even as good as I should have.
Right.
As good as I should have.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, people need to really realize like that it does catch up to you, and one day to the next you'll feel it.
Right. Well, somebody said it best, man. It's like what you're doing now. It's we're doing it for later. It's not for now. It's for when you're in 40s and 50s, right? So if you take care of yourself now, it's those years that you're gonna be grateful for.
Yeah.
And it's the 10, 15 years after now. But top fighter, man, for you
right now. I really like Islam Makhachev.
Okay.
Yeah, I like his style. I always liked the wrestler type. I like guys like Khabib that are like super dominant.
Yeah.
Like that still have this aura of unbeatable.
Yeah.
Like obviously, the Diaz brothers. I love them.
Yeah.
Back in the day, especially the like you were talking about earlier, like the trilogy fights with Conor. Those were great.
Yeah, man.
But if I had my favorite all-time fighters, it'd be like, because I used to be a Muay Thai kickboxer, so
Nice.
I like those guys. Like I like Mirko Cro Cop. Going back, I really liked Mirko Cro Cop. Like if I had my top four, I liked Daniel Cormier. I wanted him to beat John Jones so bad. He never did. Right?
That was tough, man. That was tough.
I really like Daniel Cormier. I like his personality. Just like a fun guy.
Yeah.
Khabib.
Yeah.
And then someone we were talking about, someone they don't talk about now, Randy Couture. Right. So that would be my top four.
Damn, that's awesome.
How about you?
Oh man, I would say, John Jones, man.
Yeah, right.
I love George St. Pierre. Another legend. Cain Velasquez. When he won the title for the first time, I was in my early 20s, man, and he's from Northern California.
Right.
So that was a good one to see. And
when Cain was on top, he was unbeatable.
He was.
Up until he got beat, he looked unstoppable.
He was. I mean, when he beat the wrestler, I forget Brock Lesnar.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool, man. That was amazing. That just for me was a moment of like true skill, right? Smaller, not as big as Brock Lesnar, but he like was super talented.
Mexican cardio.
Yeah. Who else? Amanda Nunes, man.
Yeah.
She's. So I think all those, and I mean, there's so many. We were so in it when I was training because of we would always put it. There was a big screen, and they would see the fights, and we would talk about who was fighting and what the pay-per-views and things like that. And I've never seen one though. I've actually never seen a fight.
Really?
Nope.
Oh shit, we gotta change.
I
that.
know, man. I gotta go to Vegas. Man. I gotta go to Vegas, man.
We gotta get you to the Sphere.
Yeah.
It's funny because so when I used to train, I used to spar, and I had that life.
Yeah.
In the gym, and there's something that I would say to people that have never done that. It's like I used to say, like I've been in more fights sometimes in a day than most people have in their whole life.
Yeah.
Right. Just in the sparring sessions, right? But when you spar with someone, whether in MMA, the way it looks on TV, but in real life, who's going to win when you feel each other.
Right.
Like when you feel the first time you get hit, you're like, it might look like it's competitive, but it's not. I know I'm going to lose, or I know I'm going to beat this guy up. Same thing when they grab you, right? I feel like sometimes it's the same thing in cooking, because to the outsider that doesn't know what they're looking at, they're like, all these chefs are the same. But when you're at the top end, you're like, nah. There's things that I see that you don't see.
Right.
Like you don't pick up on the details. It could have been just.
Yeah.
And they forgot to peel that twice.
Right.
Whatever it is.
The double shot piece.
Double shot. Yeah. That was a little too big, right? But there's a lot of similarities in the fight world and the culinary world. It's the attention to detail when you get up there.
I remember when I was starting the MMA. They were like, "Yo, like, you have to know how to get hit." Yeah. And I was like, "What? I'm gonna get hit? Like, I have to know how to get hit? Like, because people, when you're sparring and you get hit like the first time in the face, you lose it. Like you're stunned and you can't grasp it.
Yeah.
So you have to know how to keep composure because you will get hit in the face. You know. But those trainings, man, like I miss them. I do miss them, and I think it's I love the cardio, the camaraderie, the advice, right, of how to eat better and what is he doing and what are they doing and things like that.
It's almost like a kitchen atmosphere in the
It
gym.
is.
Yeah, it's
It
very,
is.
very similar.
And competitive too. Very, very competitive.
Yes, chef. Yes, coach.
Yes.
Same thing, right?
Yes.
It's interesting. I was telling someone this the other day, like there's a difference between like when you're hitting pads and you're learning how to punch and kick.
Right.
Like that looks really good.
Right.
It's like someone that has like, hey, I know how to do this on the cutting board.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, now go spar.
Yeah.
I was like, you thought you knew, but this changes everything.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you went to culinary school, you have to now go work in a real kitchen.
Right.
It's like, whoa, everything that I learned all of a sudden, now I'm getting punched in the face with the tickets. Same thing. Like working in a restaurant versus culinary school is like hitting pads and then being in a sparring session or being in a real fight.
Right. Yeah, man, I miss it. I had to go back and do it. But right now it's just running. I love running. It's peaceful. It's outside. It's the beautiful Napa. I like a hiking trail, so it's pretty incredible.
So, Chef, we're going to wrap up just with a couple of questions that I ask every single guest that comes on.
Yeah.
If you had to recognize 4 chefs for the Mount Rushmore of chefs, who would be on the legacy mountain for you?
Man, too many to choose from. I would say Thomas Keller. You know, I think obviously, American chef and for everything he's done for American cuisine. In the region that I grew up in, I would say Enrique Olvera, for my roots and what he did for Mexican cuisine. One of the first. I was able to meet him for the first time this year in Vegas. I was super excited. And yeah, it was definitely a moment. I would say somebody like Gordon Ramsay, just because how versatile he is with being a 3 Michelin star chef and also
selling hex clap at the same time. Like,
I mean, how that's a talent, man.
You're right. I agree with you 100%.
The other stuff, I've never worked for him. I've met him in passing, but I'm so impressed of how he's able to do both of those things to the highest level, right? And so it's definitely a talent.
And sell the character.
Sell it, right?
Yeah, he could sell. Right. He could sell like he's Gordon Ramsay. I wonder what he's like in real person as a real person, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because you see the food that he's putting at restaurant Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
It's like, and then it's like, well, he's still that guy too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But also opening doors for younger chefs and opportunities. Maybe I think that's one. That's a good one, man. I don't know. I'll stick to 3. 3.
All right.
Yeah, there's too many to think about.
So for a new cook that's listening right now, if you were to give them advice, something that you wish you knew when you first started cooking, what would you tell them?
What I think I would that I knew when I started cooking is be more patient.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that, and I think in kitchens you're used to not being so patient because everything has to be done the faster the better. But being patient with the process, with yourself, with your environment, I think that's my advice, is to really be patient, because it'll come if you work hard and you really dedicate yourself and you dream of it and you speak it and you are able to even dream it. It'll come. It definitely will come.
And then my last question: if you had a chef's PSA out there, like, chefs, you need to stop doing this, or start doing this, what would be the chef's PSA from you?
I would say cook who you are. Who you are, and not. And I've been at fault at this as as a younger chef, trying to do fancy or trying to do something that's not who I am. And it really takes a lot of maturity, but I think define who you are and where you grew up and what your heritage is and your roots and all that stuff. Because I think that's how it kind of flows, at least for me, naturally and successfully.
Yeah, it's easier to be you than anyone else.
Right. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like you can't be the next whatever. You can only be who you are. And I think in my younger years I would struggle and I would have to go to a different route, and I would be like, what am I doing? I gotta do who I am,
Well, Chef, where can people find you? Where can they get the book?
So I am in Calistoga. The restaurant is Auro, inside the Four Seasons. We're going into our second year of opening. I've been quite a journey. Convivir was published on September 17th of this year. So there's a couple book signings throughout the Bay Area. But come see me in Calistoga. It's about 20 miles from the city of Napa and about, an hour and a half from San Francisco. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate
Find
it.
you on Instagram?
Find me on Instagram, Chef Rogelio Garcia.
Awesome, brother. Good seeing you.
Likewise.
There.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to support the show, you know what to do. Make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Comment, let me know what you think of this episode. Go to chefspsa.com where you get everything, the books, the merch. Go buy a book, go buy a t-shirt, go buy a hoodie, go buy this hat. Beautiful and nice. Go get it. If you want early access to episodes, subscribe to my Substack. I'm going to link them in the show notes. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
Yo, it's André in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction. Stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.